There it goes. All right, I think we might be rolling, but our intro stuff's not working today, guys. So
you're gonna create your own intro.
We're gonna, yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
Maybe someone should get it on the phone and make sure we're live, huh? So usually there's a like and a subscribe and an intro and all that, but that's not showing up today. So we're gonna check it. Where's Billy when you need him? Billy, come save us.
Billy the man.
Let me find it. This is a great intro to a show when people can see that we're trying to get things figured out live.
They call it keeping it real.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
People like that more.
That's right, more authentic.
They call
that
it
way.
raw. It's raw.
It's real, yeah. So I don't know. I got the like and subscribe.
We could have our other conversations going on too.
Oh, right.
The off-air combos. Those could be cool too. People like that stuff as well.
This ain't it. Hold on.
This is where we could be arguing with one another before.
We just got to watch our mouths right now, right? All right.
Is that you planting the seed right there? Making sure everyone
Man,
watches.
I'm seeing BB right here.
Ken's
I
the
want to
only
see
one that
that.
swears anyways off air.
I know.
It says you're live, Lake Michigan prepper.
Oh, there we go.
It says live. All right. We're live. All right.
All right. Like
Yeah,
Michigan
there was
prepper.
no intro, and we're going to skip that
Thanks, man.
fancy intro stuff, all right? So
All right.
thank you we do have a guest with us right now, so thank you very much for letting us know we're live. But good afternoon and welcome to Season 3, Episode 9 of the Van Dyke Mortgage West Michigan Sports Podcast, brought to you by Durg Insurance Group. We're live. We actually are, come to find out, from the CatchMark podcast room in our Whitehall office. I'm Scott DeCamp, one of the co-hosts of this, joined by fellow co-hosts Ken Byard and Cody Kater. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Can't complain. All good.
Fantastic.
Monday.
Looking pretty tight and right with that beard now, Cody.
Is it looking better?
It is.
Up to CatchMark standards?
I can hear you better, too.
Okay,
Not as
good.
muffled anymore.
Okay, good. Yeah, a lot of people have been making those, comments to me. So I didn't know it looked that bad.
I'm just jealous because I can't grow. Mine's pure gray if I try to grow anything now.
True story.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you could still pull it off.
No, I don't know about that. So, time to welcome our guest. It's Mr. Dan Beckeman, beloved retired Reeths-Puffer principal, president of the Muskegon Area Sports Hall of Fame Board of Directors, master storyteller, and all-around swell guy. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here with everybody.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
Master storyteller and swell guy.
Yeah.
We haven't had that in forever.
By the way, make our podcast.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. He stepped in a time of need.
Well, happy to be here with you guys.
So before we dive into it, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Grieve Law, West Michigan Joint Divorce Lawyers, Big Stone Therapies, Greenridge Realty with Chris Dykeman, Sarah Reel, North Grove Brewers, Foundation Systems of Michigan with John Botten, Coldwell Banker with Dave Duesenberry, Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. And then, of course, our title sponsors, Van Dyke Mortgage Lakeshore, located at 460 West Western Avenue in Muskegon. You can give them a call at 231-332-6500. And then also Durg Insurance Group. They're located at 1535 Far Road, Norton Shores. You can call them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 at 231-744-9106. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons on our CatchMark SportsNet YouTube channel. Make sure you like and follow our social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And then as a reminder, we've already got one visitor here. We appreciate this person for being on with us, but hit us up in the comment section of this YouTube show. If you have questions for any of us, we'll do our best to answer them. So without further ado, Dan Beckeman. So, Whitehall native, resident, and alumnus. What can you tell us about growing up here and what it's like living here?
Well, my parents moved to Whitehall back in 1967. And I started at Muskegon Public, and I was a little red. And when we moved north to Whitehall, I cried for a weekend to not thinking I would ever be able to play as a Big Red. But boy, it did not take long to fall in love with the White Lake area. And to be a Whitehall or a Montague resident, to be a White Laker, to have that in your background is something to be proud of. And I still am proud. I think if you cut me, I still bleed green for Reeths-Puffer, but there's a little red in there for the Whitehall Vikings. But yeah, I really had a great high school experience at Whitehall. Graduated in the 100th class, 1977 from Whitehall. And I'm not sure, but Cody, I think Montague's first year and Whitehall's first year was 1877. So we celebrated the 100th year in 1977. And I still reside in Whitehall. And so very proud of my roots of being in the White Lake area. So
both schools started the same year?
I believe they did. If you take a look back, it's within a year. And you think of Reeths-Puffer, our first graduating class was 1959, and the same year Mona Shores. And so they're young kids on the block compared to a Whitehall, a Montague, a Muskegon Heights. They've been around for years. To think about how young a Reeths-Puffer or Mona Shores is compared to a Whitehall or a Montague. So it goes way back, way back.
It's interesting that those two schools started at the same time, and it wasn't just one school. Like, it could have been White Lake High School, right?
Well, I tell you, they have talked about that for years.
Right.
And we somehow consolidate. And, I think there's so much pride in Montague and so much pride in Whitehall that they had their own separate identities.
Yeah,
and
sure.
even though it's always been a rivalry, and when I played at Whitehall, we were in the Seaway Conference, so we never played Montague in league sports. We played Reeths-Puffer, Ludington, Orchard View, Fruitport, Spring Lake. Those were the conference schools. So my rivalry when I played really was not Montague. Matter of fact, in basketball, when we played Reeths-Puffer, the game was so big, we played at the Walker Arena. We didn't play it in either gym because the gyms were too small. And so we played at the Walker Arena back in those days in the mid-'70s. But they've talked about that for a long time, but that would never happen knowing and growing up in Whitehall and people in Montague. It's like, we are proud to be a Wildcat or proud to be a Viking, and we have friends to the north and south of that bridge.
Yeah. Can you imagine that situation? Being combined with them, what would that be like?
Where would you put the school, first of all?
Right.
Like, there's nowhere to put it.
Start? Like
put
athletically too. Like athletically, like where do you draw the line as well? Like who's coaching what? Like if they did this within the next 10 years, like, it is interesting. But I think it's interesting that they started with two, schools separated and never even thought of like that would be the time to consolidate, or that would be the time to figure out a way to make a White Lake school or whatever that is. But yeah, that would, growing up, in Montague, I could never see it.
It's hard to imagine. I'm sure
the pride that's over there, and I guess just the competitive spirit of being the little guy in the block and always trying to go after the big guy. So,
but can you imagine if they did consolidate the athletic strength of those two schools? Who could compete?
Right.
And they would dominate when you think about the athletics.
And what division would that be?
It'd be about the size of Reeths-Puffer, I think. Yeah. It's like Whitehall's 6 in the 6s, Montague's in the 4s, right? Yeah. So it'd be right around that.
Yeah, 1100, 1200 high school.
Yep.
Shores.
They'd be part of that OK Green probably, and they would have to go compete.
Okay,
but
we got to think about what's the nickname, what's the mascot going to be? Let's come up with this right now. What is it?
Yeah,
the Wildings.
I don't know. Man.
Let's Go Crazy would be their theme song.
Yeah. We're recording right now too, so this is. I'm not going to throw out anything too crazy. Yeah. But no, I think the Wildcats. No, it would be interesting though. I mean, and you just think about the gene pool, and you think about the history of this place. Both sides of the lake. It would be interesting to see how they would fare against a Mona Shores and a Reeths-Puffer and a Muskegon and all those.
I mean, let's combine. Like look at the West Michigan Conference. Let's combine these neighboring rivals: Oak Ridge and Ravenna, Hart and Shelby. That's kind of those are the biggest ones. Those three rivalries, I would say. Right. North Muskegon doesn't really have a natural. Would you say?
No, there's always buzz about North Muskegon and Puffer combining just because they're so geographically close. But
the crazy part,
unless it gets mandated, it's never happening. Any of those. Any of those.
You go from Reeths-Puffer into North Muskegon, and you go through North Muskegon, and you're back into Reeths-Puffer again.
Right.
All on the same road.
Yeah.
That's right.
Crazy.
Good old road.
The road I live on, we're technically in the Puffer district because the lines kind of zigzag a little bit.
Yeah.
Where we live. And so
it doesn't matter anymore with schools of choice.
Right, exactly. Right. So speaking of Whitehall, what sports did you grow up playing?
I played football until I broke the same ribs. I was in the backfield, and I also returned punts, and I broke my ribs on a hard tackle by a kid from Reeths-Puffer, and broke 4 ribs in 8th grade, and then I had the same ribs broken. We ran the option, and I played quarterback and running back, and I got tackled again real hard by Fruitport and broke the same ones. Dad said that's enough. Oof. So 4 years of basketball, 4 years of baseball. So I had a good experience. John Heisinger was my baseball coach. I was happy to have that in my background.
Yeah.
Great experience.
Rest in peace.
With John. Yeah, wonderful human being. And then basketball was Dick Morley for my junior and senior year.
Yeah.
So those were the sports that I played. Then I went on to Michigan State and had a great experience at Michigan State, and then started at Grant and had some great years in Grant, and then over to Reeths-Puffer for 31. So 39 overall.
Did you coach while you were at Grant?
I did.
You did?
That's a good place to start, too, because there's some great stories out of that time.
Well, I coached varsity right in my first year out of college and into Grant, and this was 1982. I ended up coaching varsity basketball and varsity baseball. And
your first year?
First year.
As a first-year teacher?
First-year teacher. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was in 2 buildings. It's in the middle school and the elementary. And we struggled at the beginning. My first year, we were 3-18, and we won 2 more games than they had won the year before that. And it was a haul to build that program, but we did. We built it. Our natural rivalries were Newaygo was a huge rivalry. That was a lot like Whitehall Montague.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about moving from 3-18 to 22-3 in 7 years, the great stories I had were people from Montague. Jim Tate wanted to. I had great connections with Mike Henry at Orchard View. I said, I want to play some people in the Muskegon area, because we were always going to Tri-County and out east and playing a lot of schools out there, Lakeview and Montebello.
Yeah.
So I wanted to shift that. So I set up a contract with Montague. At the time, Jim Tate was coaching. And then probably the greatest games were 1987-88. Montague was rated in the state. We were rated in the state.
Yeah, they had some dudes.
You know who played on those teams, right?
Newaygo was pretty good too.
Newaygo was loaded in 1983 and 84 with Dan Davis, Scott Bonk. That group of players lost to Hamilton in the regionals, and Hamilton had a guy named Dave Haberdink who went on to play at Western and then went on to play in the NFL for the New Orleans Saints. And Hamilton beat Kalamazoo Christian in the state championship game. So Newaygo lost to the state championship in '84, and yeah, they were loaded, Cody.
Because Montague lost in '88, right, to Newaygo.
To
me.
Grant.
To Grant. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the team that Osborne played for.
Yeah.
Osborne,
Dave
Erdman, all those guys.
Erdman and Lindquist. That was a real, and Paul Schloff. That was matter of fact. They were
solid
that.
squad.
Van Bergen was on that team. Did you say he was a
Brad
Deadeye
Van Bergen.
shooter? Brad Van Bergen was on that.
They came to our gym. They were 10-0. We were 10-0, and that was the game of the week. And Chris McCoskey was writing for the Chronicle back in those days.
He covers the Tigers now. Yeah.
And sold out gym. And we ended up beating them. But Dave Osborne, my story on him is, he's kind of an intimidating guy. Dave was very strong. He was defensive-minded. The story kind of goes like this, and it'd be interesting to hear Dave's rendition of it. But he was in line to get some at the concession. He kind of pushed in on my guard, Joe Skidema, who was quite a player. Anyway, make a long story short, he bumped into him, kind of set the stage, and Joe Skidema scored 36 on Dave, and we ended up beating him by about 28. So then we fast forward. We fast forward to the regional district regional semifinals at Godwin Heights, and we're playing Montague. Montague's 21-1. Their only loss was to us, and we're 22-2.
Yeah.
At that time, we had lost to a good Lakeview team, and now we're up by 20 at halftime. And so it's sold out. All of a sudden, Montague started to come on. They brought in, and we got Paul Schloff in foul trouble real quick. He had 3 fouls in the first quarter. He had to sit the bench. Never really got into the game. They took Dave Osborne and put him on Dwayne Shears because Skidema just killed him. They started coming back, and they had a swing. And we ended up winning by about 12, but Brad Van Bergen was the guy, the catalyst that came off the bench, and he was hitting everything. And I scouted them pretty well. I knew Erdman was going to try and penetrate, he's going to kick it out.
Right.
Schlaff was either going to take a shot or he's going to drive, and he drove. They were looking for Lindquist on a roll. But so Erdman didn't have Schlaff to go to. But Brad Van Bergen, it's like, I didn't scout him, and he hit everything. And I would think that if there were 4 more minutes in the game, that game would have probably gone into an overtime game. But so then, when you mentioned Nuevo, they had a kid named Brian Pumford who could flat out play.
Yeah, he could score.
He's the assistant now for Dave at Montague.
He could shoot. So he ends up going to Muskegon Community College. So did my Dwayne Cheers. I just saw that they celebrated a 1,000-point score at Ludington.
Oh, yeah.
This doesn't happen often. I had 2 1,000-point guards on that team.
Cheers and Skydeman,
think of
right?
that. One had 1,400, the other had 1,200 points.
Yeah.
In the backcourt.
So my dad used to take me to a Grant game every now and then. I might have been at one of those Montague games, in fact, but just loved watching those guys. Skidema, Shears, Chris Leslie, Lance Stray.
Aquinas, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just great team.
Yeah.
You guys lost, was it Calvin Christian? Was that James Vosco?
Yeah, and we had scouted
Remember
him.
hearing that name?
That's the Michigan guy.
The Michigan guy, yeah.
Right.
So, and then they had a big kid that went on to be a star at Hillsdale, and the other kid, the guard, went on to be an all-conference player at Calvin. They were loaded. But Bosco, I said, we're going to give him the 3, and he's going to want to shoot it. Just get a hand up. Just don't keep him off the boards. Shooting like 20%, and he hit like 5 threes on it. And I mean, the crowd saying, I could hear the people like, man, are you going to get on the guy? I'm thinking, put Leslie out there, you're going to drive around, it's going to be Dunk City.
Do you think Van Bergen was on the phone with Vasco?
I tell you what.
You're going to have looks all day.
All day if Leslie's guarding you. But anyway, Dave Osborne then goes with Dwayne Cheers. They win
national title game.
National title game. It was incredible. And we'd watch those, and they are good friends to this day. And I see Dave Osborne. I just have great respect for him. But I'll tell you what, when they went on to Muskegon Community College, you'd have Dwayne Shears, who had led him in scoring, was junior college All-American, went on to IPFW. But Dave ran. I mean, he was so physical. And he would take on who's the guy? Who's their guy? I'm on him. And Gifford put him on him. And I'll tell you what, when he's putting his forearm in your chest, you're feeling it for a weekend. And it was an enjoyable thing to watch them excel to the next level, but then become lifelong friends through sports.
Yeah.
It's a lot of good basketball in the area around that time. The 88, 89, 87, yeah.
Really? So do you think Dave really bumped into him? Let's
You want to go on that, don't you?
I do.
Well, yeah.
I'm not letting
There's
that go.
no question he bumped into him.
Well, I tell you what.
I want to know the story.
I'm just glad that Dave didn't want to arm wrestle him because he broke his arm.
That's fair.
That's Dave was one that he liked to intimidate people. That's just kind of was his thing. And the thing is you get people that want to try to intimidate you and they can't back it up. He could back it up, but he struggled with Joe Skidema.
Joe was so skilled.
So dynamic.
That night he did.
Right.
Yeah.
Joe was so good, though. He was he played at Grand Valley, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And for a while, he held their 3-point scoring record. And then that was broken because that was a long time ago.
So this was obviously quite a few years after this, but I don't know if he went back to school or finished up his teacher certification, because I had a class or two with him at MSU.
Yeah.
Joe did. He was there for a little bit just for the educational, the teacher's ed, that stuff. He was such a nice guy.
Well, you say a story. Here's a story for you on Cal Van Single. The 2 guys, when I came to Grant, if you can imagine, as Cody knowing you probably do the same thing. They are talking at the scoring table on how many points we're going to get beat by. One's the announcer, the other's a scorebook. And I heard him talking about it. And one of my athletic director, Art Willick, I said, this is the last time they're going to announce and score if this is their dialogue about our team. They're done. One was a board member. Now, I'm not going to say his name. I think I put him in a precarious position. I said to Cal Van Single, who would come to my games, he would scout for me. I'd say, I said, Cal, I need you to announce. Yeah, I can't announce. I can't. I said, I need you. You got to be here this Friday. I just got rid of the guy. and he was, I think he went into a cold sweat. And I said, you just have to do this. You got to be my announcer for the home games. It's really easy. Basket by Skydema, basket by Shears, and basket by whoever. That's all you got to say. Foul. Who's a foul? And how many are there? It's easy.
Right.
He's never been behind a mic, and he'll tell you the story that he had a speech impediment.
Right.
When he was a kid growing up, he had speech therapy as a kid, and that's, I think, what was so terrifying for him. And I used to call him Golden Throat. After the first couple, he said, "Man, you're really good at this. Call you Golden Throat from now on." And he announced all of my games right through until I left for Reeths-Puffer in 1990. And then he went from there to doing some radio for, I think it was WFHN out of Fremont. And then with Rich and a couple other people. And now you know the rest of the story.
Right.
Yeah, and he and John Russell got the Gene Young Distinguished Service Award for Muskegon Area Sports Hall of Fame a couple years ago. And
well deserved.
That's the story that Cal always says, and he always gives you credit, Dan, for believing in them and giving them an opportunity. And like you said, the rest is history. So, and they do a great job for us calling games. So,
oh, they're great. John's just a wonderful guy too.
You guys had some studs, man. I mean, you guys had, from the announcers to the players. You guys had a role. Are you a believer in the Jimmies and Joes or the X's and O's? Because I mean, you had 2,000-point scores on your squad. Did you step back and say, "Hey, guys, go play ball," or what did that look like?
Well, that I'll give you an example. Bob Knight would tell you that when he coached, his whole offense was focused on 15-foot spacing, pick and roll, screen away, hit the open man with a bounce pass, always be in a triple threat position. When we played Montague in that big game, I ran 2 different plays that I had not run before. I said, what I want you to do is keep the spacing, get the fast break, keep open in lanes, be ready at all times to be at the 3 and shoot it. And there were times where it was more about me getting spacing. We had 2 or 3 offensive sets, but they were good enough where if that set wasn't working or they saw that they had a hedge off a screen, they just took care of it.
So you're a little blended.
Yeah. There were times, Cody, and I loved the players. I actually got more Christmas cards and had more sweat coaching with the teams that were 3-18 and 7-14 because you worked your butt off and you look down the bench. And what you have is great relationships, but when you think about the game itself of playing basketball, the kids would tell you we're not very good. But they're just going to bleed for one another out there. But and so sometimes winning games is great and brings brings a community to get together. But when you look at the team, are they better than what they were coming in at the end, and are they better people? Do they understand that they're part of something greater than themselves? And I'm seeing that being an outsider now with you. I'm seeing like what you had the other day, a picture of the kids that came in to lift weights, a record number on when they didn't even have to come in. Those types of things. They're starting to believe, and I think they're seeing in you someone who believes in them and then is going to hold them accountable. And that's what I did at Grant is I held them accountable, but I loved on them. And they saw that if we win this game, that's great, but did I contribute? But did I contribute as much as I could all week in preparation? So what did we do along that line? So when they left, they had tears. They wept because they were going to miss the time we had together. Chris Leslie, he cried so hard after I lost at Kelvin that he had a really bad bloody nose, like he broke a blood vessel. And what I remember about that, it wasn't all of the wins. For him, it was the end of 2 years of relationships and bonding that we created over summers of playing at Pentwater's tournament or at Kelvin College or Hope College, and the trips in cars and the tents camping and things. Those, he realized it was over. His basketball wasn't over because he's going to play at Aquinas. But what he came to understand about being a part of something that he knew he would take with him for the rest of his life. That's what coaching for me was really all about. And so when you think about those X's and O's, the Jimmies and Joes, for me, it's always been about the Jimmies and Joes because I still connect with those kids that were 3-18 through how many children they have now. And they're in college and married, and it's crazy what you get.
Right. No, we've always had a coach that said, the X's and O's don't work until you pour into the Jimmies and Joes, so that was always, I can't say that I'm a Jimmy and Joe guy, I don't believe that skill will just outbeat X's and O's. I think there's a lot of strategy that can go involved, get put in place and culture and those types of things. But it is interesting, when you pour into them and to see what you get out of it as well.
Yeah. So Danny Hunt's on there, right? And we just had him last week from Rocky, and we talked about culture and so on and so forth.
He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, great stuff. So throughout your time, 39 years, right, in education.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you take the stance that educational athletics, it's just another opportunity to extend the classroom, and it's a learning environment. Are you seeing any trends like stepping away from it, that like a coaching trend? Like, are more people into like developing culture now that they used to? Was it just about screaming in the old school coaching ways? Are you seeing anything, any trends like that in coaching as you kind of get to step back and kind of look at the whole, system, for lack of a better word?
Ken, what I see, and it's different from the standpoint of maybe football, and Cody could speak to that, but what I've seen that's changed is having these small town schools and the kids grow up in the program. The culture now, because of so many elite sports camps and sports teams, it's now it's an opportunity for other schools to recruit. And, if I'm on a podcast and say, oh, they don't really recruit, their nose is longer than Pinocchio's.
Right.
You see people leave. Mona Shores had a couple kids leave to go to Northview. Northview's had an outstanding season last year. They're experiencing a great season this year. You got kids that were at Catholic Central, now they're at Christian. The thing I worry about is how quick kids are to look to move, and how parents will spend all kinds of money on a kid to get involved with an elite program. You see it in volleyball, you see it in basketball, you see it in summer league baseball. The City League in Muskegon played in that for years, and then all of a sudden you start getting to the Mudcats and all these elite teams, and are pulling them away from their sports teams right in their own communities. I think there's a lot more pressure on coaches today because of those camps where they said, I spent $1,200, I expect my kid to play. And, but they weren't playing with their kids
right
in their gym. So I worry a little bit about that culture. I think winning does bring that around. When, Cody had a great season this past year, and he's building this Reeths-Puffer program. It's not where he wants it yet, but it's coming. And I think what happens is when coaches extend out into the communities and build the programs from the elementaries up. And I read a stat, I think it was Rodney Walker told me they had 380 kids involved in the winter basketball programs at Reeths-Puffer. I've never even heard of a number like that.
That's crazy.
If they can continue to do that and build that community's there. But the pressure on coaches today is it's not from a basketball season of November to March. It's okay, now that's over. Now are we coming in on a Saturday?
Right.
We're doing it at night. And the pressures that coaches have now to still have a life of their own, where they have a wife and children, or they have a husband and children. That's something now where it does take its toll on.
That's a great point
on coaches these days.
So just to catch up on comments real quick, and we thank you guys for commenting. Obviously, Ken just alluded to Danny Hunt, who was on our show last week, did a great job talking about culture and all those things. And we have Lake Michigan Prepper said Danny Davis was a beast on the hardwood, the Newaygo guy.
Dan Davis was something else. He now follows Grand Haven all over the place, but he was a lefty. And, he developed an outside shot because in high school, he didn't need to. He just jumped
like
people.
Crazy, right?
He jumped over people, and he used the backboard all the time. But then when he went on to Muskegon Community College, he was successful there. Then he went to Kelvin, was most valuable player in that league at Kelvin.
He was All-American, right, at Kelvin?
Yeah, he played for Eddie Dalma over there. And but he developed a tremendous – he was as good a three-point shooter as anybody, and he was 6'5". But when they mentioned that he was a beast, he was probably 6'5", 215 solid pounds in height. That's a pretty good-sized kid coming out of Newaygo. And he played hard – and he used his advantage.
Speaking of beast out of Newaygo, how about Matt Shepard?
I was going to say there's a Matt Shepard in there too at some point.
No, he was there when during the Mike Birdie years. But I bring up that quick little segue. Shepard's an assistant for Whitehall basketball. Saw a heck of a game Friday. Whitehall got even, I guess, so to speak, with Ludington, 88-77. Whitehall was down 16 points in the first half, and Cam Thompson had 18 points in the second quarter alone, finished with 36 on 15 and 19 shooting,
Unreal.
18 rebounds.
And I heard he missed 7 free throws in a row or something like that.
He was 4 of 12 from the line.
Oh, wow.
He missed the first 4. So the teams got combined for 3 technicals before the game even started because they were dunking in pregame.
I was wondering about that.
Were the refs out there?
Yeah.
They were out there and they're continuing to dunk.
There's an official that I know that we're not going to name.
Be good at it, man.
But we were talking for a second. He goes, yeah, we had heard that these teams like to dunk, and we were out there waiting for them. So kind of like
interesting.
I think every team that we've seen at the OK Green is the same way.
Yeah.
They all dunk.
Yeah, I don't know.
In fact, that's what Whitehall does, and probably
in the warm up.
I don't know if they're going to do it anymore. Where they kind of meet at midcourt and they all run to the hoop
do the
and
Michigan
Cam.
State thing.
Yep, just flushes one down, and he So he had 4. David Schillinger, a really good player for Leadington, passed 1,000 points on Friday. He split his 2 free throws, and then Cam had 4 in a row right in front of the student section for Leadington. He missed all 4 of them, which he's working on that perimeter shot before the game even started. So he's over, and then he picked up 2 quick fouls. So he's off to this inauspicious start, and you're like, man, this isn't going to go well. And then
finished with 36.
That's amazing.
But I did wonder because I just read read what you guys were putting out there, but. The kid scored 1,000 points. They stopped the game to honor him.
They called a timeout. Leadington called a full timeout.
Did the momentum flip?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little.
Because I thought because they were up by 14 at that point.
It was late first quarter when it happened.
Okay,
so it wasn't maybe quite that yet, but they was heading that way.
Okay, yeah, I knew from what I heard they were up 10, 12, 14, somewhere around there.
Whitehall went on a pretty big run.
And then after that, Whitehall went on a run after they stopped the game.
Shouldn't have called that timeout.
Yeah.
We'll do that at halftime.
Just as the coach sitting back there reading the article and looking at the highlights, I'm going, man, that's a big game to be stopping a whole lot of good momentum. I just didn't know if that was the truth behind it.
You've been in that gym. I mean, it's a classic gym.
Great gym.
Loud. It was so loud, packed. I mean, it was
my favorite gym to coach in, throughout my 5 years.
It was what you hope for a high school.
Now, do they still have, Ludington used to have wood from the rim down. Do they still have that?
I don't know.
Bleachers?
No, they're baskets where fiberglass rim height, then it was wood. 2 gyms had Muskegon heights.
No.
So those rims back in those days were dead. It would hit, and there it's like you get every kind of roll. I remember saying that about, but what a great place, hard place to win in Ludington.
Yeah. They're getting all new. They have a $100 million bond going on right now, so they're getting all the new stuff.
Are they going to touch that gym?
All that stuff.
They're going to touch the gym a little bit.
They're getting
bleachers.
turf.
Dang it! They're getting turf.
They're getting turf,
right?
Ken.
I know. This isn't about me and North Muskegon. It's about Dan Beckeman and his story.
It's painful.
I
don't want to bring about turf up right now.
Let's not bring turf.
That's a 4-letter word.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah, fair enough. So your time at Grant and working in that league, what would your thoughts be on those schools, Newaygo and Grant in particular, wanting to join the West Michigan Conference? Because to me, it seems like that would make sense. Like if they wanted to invite more schools, those would be 2 that would be intriguing.
I think they would always would have been a good fit.
Yeah, right.
There,
right.
The West Michigan for the longest time had a great setting. You had one long trip, Mason County,
right,
to North Muskegon, right. At Newaygo, we go to Tri-County. We go all over the place.
Right.
Morley-Stanwood out by Big Rapids. To bring Grant and Newaygo in right near the West Michigan, especially when you think about Ravenna. Ravenna and Grant are next door neighbors.
I was just thinking that when you said your dad was bringing you to games. Like, why are you going all the way to Grant?
It's just down the road.
Pretty close.
Bailey Road.
You could even throw Kent City in there, too.
They really should be, right?
Yeah. It would be a great ad, if you will. When I look at that, it's difficult for me. It's rivers and woods.
Rivers and lakes.
Yep. And you think about some of the schools, like, is it Reed City's in there?
They're in the CSA with Grant and Newaygo.
Okay. It goes up to Manistee.
There you go. I think it would have been a great thing to have.
Yeah, I thought so too.
But I think with what they've got now, and it's difficult because I pay attention to the OK Conference. I really don't follow anything else of those leagues, but that's just kind of what I've been doing for years. And but I still follow Grant. I think that would have been a nice add to that West Michigan League.
Yeah.
We got a guy in here who can't pick a side whether he loves Montague or Reeths-Puffer. His name's David Dusenberry. He says love the conversations, love Dan's wardrobe. Need more Reeths-Puffer football history.
Well, I go back to Reeths-Puffer. When I think of Cody, what an opportunity he's got. That everybody goes back to the 1992 state championship. We played Walled Lake Western, but Reeths-Puffer always we were a football school, believe it or not. We bad season was 7-2. But what happened where we were trying really hard to get into the OK Conference, because when the Seaway Conference disbanded, I was principal and we were left on the outside. We were playing Sheboygan. We were going into the Thumb area to find games.
Oh.
And we'd have a game
Brutal.
on Friday night where we left, and I got there at halftime. And when we did get into the OK Conference, if you can imagine this, we had an OK Conference Red, Metro, and Lakeshore, and we had to cross over. So we're playing East Kentwood, who's 2 to 3 times our size. We're playing Grand Haven, West Ottawa, Holland. Back then we would play.
Jennison was in that?
Jennison was in it. Hudsonville.
The smallest. Greenville.
And Greenville. Well, Greenville was in our Seaway Conference, and when it was Greenville and Manistee that was the death knell for the Seaway Conference, because those two schools are so far away.
Right.
You can't play, and that's when it was like that conference was over. But it was very difficult to play and win when we'd always only have 4 home games. We're on the road 5 out of 9 games, and we're playing a crossover with the Metro.
Yeah.
And every school over there's much larger than
Right.
Reeths-Puffer at the time. We're about 1,100 at the time. East Kent was 2,800. Hudsonville's 1,800.
Right. That would have been Jennison.
Grand Haven.
Probably Jennison at the time was the smallest, right?
was
or
one of the
Holland.
smallest schools,
And they're
yeah.
still probably bigger than 1,100.
Yeah, and it was really tough. But when I think about the history of the school, we haven't had a playoff run. Jeff Uganski was the last coach in 2000, that fall of 2005, that we actually had a playoff game. And then, with moving forward, we're hoping to, no pressure at all, but I think things are coming up. I can tell you right now, Reeths-Puffer coming out of the gate, when I saw our Farmington, I think our first 4 games, Cody's got his hands full. I mean, the toughest part of our conference is at the front end.
Wait, who'd you pick up? Did you get a week 2?
Farmington, yeah.
Week
so
2?
So we're at Grand Haven, at Farmington, at Mona Shores, and then we're home against Holland, but then we're home against Muskegon.
Yeah.
So that's our first 5. Yeah.
The tough part is getting you're on the road.
Yep.
Right.
And those that's hard. When you try hard. I used to tell my athletic director, do your very best. I don't want it to have 2 football games away in a row. Do what you got to do, but I want a home game, I want a away game, and especially if it's 5-4, there's no excuse on that one.
Right.
Yep.
That's just my opinion, and I used to press them on that, where it's an important piece to that. So when I think about Reeths-Puffer football and the history of it, I wish I could tell you more. I go all the way back to 1990, but Reeths-Puffer was a very good football team in the 70s, and it was always Fruitport. And back in the 90s, it was Reeths-Puffer and Fruitport would vie for the Seaway Conference, and it was called the Showdown. It was a huge rivalry back then, and you wouldn't find a seat. And it was like the Michigan-Ohio State. It was always scheduled week 9. You just could do that back in those days. It's like, Reeths-Puffer and Fruitport, they're going to be the best. Let's schedule around them.
Yeah.
And the athletic directors did that, and no one argued. OV's not at Fruitport, they're not arguing. I mean, Ludington, they're not. Muskegon Heights, they're not arguing.
Right.
So, we had some really good years.
What are your thoughts on? I don't know if you follow the playoff format for football closely. Right now there's the equations, and you got to figure out all the wins and the losses and blah blah blah. But there's talk about in the next year or 2 getting rid of week 9 and doing all in, so everybody makes the playoffs, and week 9 is the district game. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to guess Cody would probably favor that. I would too. I would want to know the whole issue on. It's still going to come down to points and things like that. The OK Green is as good as any division in the OK Conference. Take a look at Mona Shores and Muskegon right now. They're pretty darn good.
Right.
And we were no slouch. I mean, think about it. If you were at the Muskegon game, we were in that game to the very end. We played Muskegon as good as anybody played Muskegon, and we were on the road at that game.
Well, Forest Hill Central is in the green, right?
No, they're in white.
White.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But
All right.
we ended up, we faced
Right, but-
Muskegon, lost to it by a touchdown. we had a punt block against Morris Shores.
Right there.
Ended up losing that one, not putting points on the board, hurt that in that one. Zeeland West lost to Muskegon, when we lost to Zeeland West, and then Forest Hill Central went to the state finals.
Right.
But,
So if we were to do that, I would love to have our kids have that opportunity like they do in every other sport.
Right.
And we do have some kids at Reeths-Puffer, Cody, tell you, they just play football. And we have some that are multi-sport. Majority of them play other sports, but there's a couple kids, that's all they get.
Right.
And right now in the OK Green, we only have a couple natural rivalries. You got Mona Shores and you got Muskegon. But, our kids don't shop with Holland.
Right.
Our kids don't go to movies with some of those schools. And so losing a week 9 means we're going to have we're just going to close out an open date, and they should schedule that with another OK school. It's ridiculous that you got to go find Farmington.
Yeah.
Yep.
That still is something. I was OK president in 2010, and I pressed it with all of the principals because, at Reeths-Puffer, I had an athletic director. Well, guess what? I sat down with him and let him know this is what we're going to do. I always wanted the coach to give me, who do you want to play? But they should really look to the OK Conference. They shouldn't have to go to Farmington when we could play somebody out of the white. We could play somebody out of the gold, for that matter.
It really, and I'm not going to speak for you, Cody, but part of that decision I have to believe was due to the playoff points format, right? Like
90% of it.
Right? So you can't play local schools who are smaller because what do you gain from that?
We gain nothing.
Right. And so
and we're
now
one of the larger schools.
It can hurt you.
And now you have to look around, right? And so without that formula in place as the main predictor of playoffs, then you get some freedom and flexibility in who you can schedule.
I mean, when it benefits you more to not play than to play, then something's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Cody and I kind of laughed about, North Muskegon and Puffer playing because we needed a week 2 also. And what a great little neighborhood thing that would have been, but it makes no sense for them to do that because there's nothing to gain from it, unfortunately.
And it's even the same thing we're at the coaches clinic with Whitehall. I mean, how cool would that be? Be able to bring these two communities together, and that would be a big game for the boys, and that would be something that both, I think, communities would take pride in, and you just can't do it because it's a lose-lose for us, and it's a win-win for them. Right. So, I mean, we understand that they would want to schedule, but we're in no way wanting to schedule that game because we want to make it to the playoffs. We want to win the first, playoff game since 1992 at Reeths-Puffer. That is a goal. I do like a little bit of me. Yeah, that'd be cool to have a 9-game, 8-game, I guess, week deal there. But there's a part of me where I'm going to win a playoff game at Reeths-Puffer. So don't do it. I'm going to win. Don't give us that. Everyone's in the playoffs
for sure.
And then I win, and then or we win, and then it's you won because everyone's in. No, I don't want that. I want to figure out a way to win a playoff game by these rules in front of us right now.
So Dan said, no pressure because I think that change is coming.
Yeah, I know. It's getting voted on this month.
Right. My last principal hat conversation, because I'm a retired guy, but I'll tell you the thing that I did not like is we'd have 2 football games played before I had students in school, and that's
not a fan.
That's not right. It's not. I can't. Kids aren't fired up. You can't even run an assembly.
They're not even there.
They don't even know who's playing. And it's hard. It's hard to get. So I struggle with that.
I agree.
Where. Put all those games where there's school going on.
Absolutely.
So you retired not real long ago, but you're still calling games for Reeths-Puffer. Why do you still do it?
I just love the school. And I think when I started football, announcing for Cody's games, I had never watched a game in that press box. I was always on the sideline. And so I never really watched all the game because, I'm keeping an eye on people, shaking hands and things like that. But to stay a part of it, I think there's a need for me to I have that desire because I just want to be part of the community and continue to be a part of the community. So I do football, and then I do some of the boys and girls basketball games because I really enjoy it. And that started when my son was a freshman. I'd go into the gym, sit down and want to talk. Watch him play, and somebody tapped me on my shoulder. Hey, Mr. Beckeman, can I talk to you a minute? And of course, I would say yes. Then I'd miss 4 or 5 minutes of him playing. So I said, I told my athletic director at the time, Todd Farmer, I said, listen, I'm gonna call the games. I'm gonna announce the basketball game so I can watch with boys. so I can watch my son play. Nobody's going to bother me. That's a true story. And nobody bothers you when you're announcing. You can't say, hey, Mr. Beckeman, can I have a word with you? No, I'm announcing a game. And then, when Trent Clariter had retired, they said they wanted someone to announce the football games, and I was happy to be able to step in. And, I'll do that. But, I think the love of Reeths-Puffer supersedes anything. And, I know football, but I don't know it like Cody. I can announce it. And I have a couple of helpers up there to let me know what's that call. I don't understand what the Whitecap's doing on that one. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. And I try to do trivia at the football games, and they're always Reeths-Puffer, so you get some history. So I always have something about the history of the school.
Always teaching.
And then recently, you were the arena was named after you. Now, when you heard that was going to happen, what were the emotions that kind of swept over you? And then when the actual night happened, when they actually had the ceremony, I mean, what kind of what was that like?
Here's how that story went. I didn't know anything about it. I actually my brother lives with us. He has ALS, my older brother, and so we care for him. And I said, "You want to come to the game?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I'll come to the game." And he said, "Can I just sit by you?" I said, "Well, you can sit right behind me." So I go into the game and I sit down. And the referee came over to me, Jeff Dunn, who was a minister in the area. He said, "So, what's it feel like?" And Cliff Sandy's walking over. He said, "What's it feel like to have a building named after you?" And I'm getting music
Jeff.
ready.
Jeez, old Pete.
Yeah. And I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, and then Cliff said, "Hey, let me," grabs my attention. So I didn't even know. And then Cliff had contacted my family, and so my wife, all my children except my son who lives in New York came.
And they were all in on it.
They were all in on it.
You didn't know.
No idea.
That's awesome.
How they were able to keep that.
I will say this: I saw some of the Hall of Fame board members there, and I'm going, "What are they doing here?" Honestly, I was like, "What are they here for?" It's one of those types of things.
Yeah.
And then. So then when Paul Schlaff said, "I need you to step aside, I need to grab the mic," I looked at him and said, "What are you talking about? We're getting ready for the national anthem here." So I didn't know. But I knew something's not right. When he said that, and then I saw Cliff going on, I said, "What's going on here?" And I didn't know that my brother was already in on it. So for me to even ask him to come to the game was, so then they went through that ceremony. And, the emotion, obviously I was overwhelmed. I mean, so humbled that I would never have expected anything like that, and I'm still humbled to this day.
So segueing on this too, Tom Jenkins, Ira's dad.
Oh yeah.
So in the intro, I announced you as a master storyteller because I think you do a phenomenal job as an MC for the Muskegon Area Sports Hall of Fame. Dan is our board of directors president now, and he's been on the board of directors for quite a long time now. And so last year, when the scholar athletes, Ira Jenkins from Whitehall was one of them. And I don't know if you want to set this up, but I don't know if you guys ever saw that video, but it was phenomenal. He actually took his coat off. "Okay, Ira, we're going to go at it right now on the stage." So
I love it.
Yeah. And, of course, and Tom, his kids, Wyatt, wow, when I shook Wyatt's hand introducing his family to me, he almost broke my hand.
Wyatt is my younger brother, yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even Ira, that was Wyatt.
Yeah, I know. And Wyatt, so Ira's up there, of course, I don't know how many matches he had won in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, he holds the record for the shortest mat time. He goes out there and pins people in like 8 seconds. I said, "Okay, we're gonna."
How long would you last?
How
long would you last on the mat?
I would run. So how far could I run before he'd grab me and pin me? I think I could probably get at least 3 seconds head start, flip me over. I could maybe beat 8. But I had told him, I said, "Listen, we're gonna do rock, paper, scissors in front of all these people." And so that's what we did. And I said, "We're just gonna do it one."
Didn't you beat him too?
And I did. And I put the
That's
hands
his first
up.
loss. I don't know when.
I can honestly say that I beat Ira Jenkins. Now, they don't know what that's all about, but we had a lot of fun with it. And that's what you want to do, is have fun with the kids. And, they're nervous anyway. Even Ira, as much as he's been in front of the spotlight and things like that, when you have him in front of a large crowd of people at a induction ceremony, he was a little nervous, but we smiled and laughed and had a good time.
Yeah, so I serve on that board of directors with you, but I mean, it's and just to throw a little plug, we got our newest class coming in, 2023. We have a Nuevo guy.
Yes, we do.
Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Berger, or is it Berger? Berger?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who I'm talking
I
about?
do not know. I do not.
Anyway, he had a nice
NFL.
career with the Minnesota Vikings. He played at Newaygo High School. He played at Michigan Tech.
Yeah, no, I know who that
Yeah,
is.
he's kind of like a similar to Todd Herman's type story.
Yeah.
Kind of had similar career paths that way. We've got Fruitport volleyball coach, retired, highly successful, Dan Potts. The 2009 through 2012 Mona Shores girls golf teams that captured 4 straight state titles in dominating fashion. And then the 1953 Muskegon St. Joseph's boys basketball squad that won a state championship. Those are the groups that are going in. And then our Gene Young Distinguished Services, Frank Coletta, he's the winner of that. And I went out and interviewed him in Urbana last week. He's 95 years old and moves around like crazy. He was going up and down the stairs. I'm trying to keep up with him, and he still he's still pretty sharp for being a gentleman that's up there. They've lived in the same house for 70 years.
Wow.
Out
Probably knows
Urbana.
those stairs quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's cool.
So, I mean, how important is it to continue to serve in that capacity and to maybe promote and share the history of the Muskegon area?
Well, the board and really wants to continue the work done that Gene Young started back in 1985. There is such a rich tradition, and we go all the way up to like a Hart. We really haven't broached Ludington, and we go as far down as Grand Haven. Kind of that's our mark, and then basically the Newaygo County. There's still so many very viable athletes that we will certainly consider, but they still keep coming. They just keep coming, and there's more and more. And so our hope and goal is to continue that process of selecting outstanding teams, individuals, and coaches. And this, I'll tell you, the story behind the 1953 St. Joe State Championships is straight out of Hoosiers. I mean, when you hear the story, it's as if they made that movie from this team. And who wins 4 straight state titles in girls golf? Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And Dan Pachi, and think of volleyball. Oh my goodness.
Right.
And to have another pro football player, to think of what Todd Harriman's did, and now what we've got with Joe Berger is just it's going to be another outstanding class. And then there's going to be more waiting in the wings. They just keep coming. And
So does that group meet monthly? Is that
yes,
you guys?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we meet on, and we just recently had a meeting last week, Monday, I think it was.
Yep.
And,
And we'll have this will be released, in your media outlets pretty soon here with the class and more details on them. And then there'll be some ticket info coming soon too, as far as people want to attend the banquet, which I believe is the second or third week in June.
Well, I think about the state championships that you won at Montague. There's been conversation about those teams. It's one thing to have mythical state titles like Muskegon had.
Right.
They had, and Catholic Central has, I can't recall the number, I think they have 7 state titles. But when you start thinking about schools that are small communities going up against schools like Detroit Country Day and some of the Orchard Lake St. Mary, some of these schools that, they can kind of cherry pick.
Kinda cherry pick?
Yeah, they didn't cherry pick with Montague. The kids kind of grew up there, and you look at the square mileage of that little town. It speaks volumes. And that baseball team that Nate McLeod played on, they didn't win a state title, but you look at some of the
home run records.
Unbelievable.
Who proposes? Who proposes these teams?
We get people that
vote?
actually recommend, and they email us.
Oh, email.
And
okay.
there's a right on our form. You can recommend a team to be looked at.
Even players and coaches and all that. So everything.
So I got an email last fall from somebody that wanted us to consider the 1972 Shelby wrestling team, because that year Shelby won the boys state title in basketball. What people don't realize that the 2 winter sports and boys won state titles. Back in those days, there weren't hockey teams and things.
Yeah, it was
Just
impressive.
basketball and wrestling.
And they won.
They both won.
They won state titles, and so it's something to look at, because Shelby at the time was very, very strong in wrestling, but they were in basketball too. So that just gives you an idea of, you start thinking about all these different places.
So when you vote on that, are you like a certain player? Or a coach? Are you looking at state championships?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
when you
think-
look at the pedigree,
Picking up on a line of
trophies.
questioning here from Cody, are you or not? I'm going to get an email from a guy named Jody Mater is going to email
Jody
us pretty
Mater.
soon. So how does one get on this Hall of Fame?
Who votes?
and when do you vote?
What are their names?
What kind of car do they drive?
No. I could. Yeah. I mean,
Wait your
that's-
turn, Cody.
Yeah. It's just cool. But like,
Yeah.
you always have that debate of,
Yeah.
the Kobe and LeBron or the LeBron, Michael Jordan. You always have these debates. So you want like just thinking about it in our own local, I guess,
Yeah.
Hall of Fame. Like, how do we decide who gets there? Because I was there for Tony's for his, because Jacob Bushberger was the student athlete.
You were a
student
scholar athlete.
I was a scholar athlete as well, but like Jacob was there, so I was there with him. And then Tony had his speech, and I'm just going, thinking to myself, like, all right, like how do you get up there, and those types of things. So like, what are you guys looking for, out of a player or a coach?
If it's a player, usually they've had a stellar high school, stellar college, and sometimes pro career. A team, it's always a state championship. Like Holton won a state volleyball title, and it was a unique thing. But you can't go with conference teams.
Right.
Every school's got dozens of those. But when you start looking at state titles, and then what makes that one so specific? In other words, we've had this conversation. West Michigan Christian has had 4 state titles in boys basketball. Well, so was the 68, 69, 72, or 74 team better? Which one was the best?
Right.
And so you have to discern, well, was it when Henry DeLue played, or was it when Dave Dorn played? So those are some of the things and then what it is there's a lot of work done behind the scenes to build and validate and vet the statistics and things. Another example, probably the greatest female athlete to ever come out of Grand Haven last year, Abby Cole. Phenomenal. All Big Ten. She was all state in girls basketball, won back-to-back state championships in basketball, never won one in volleyball. She was runner-up in Miss Volleyball. Then she went to Michigan. She was all Big Ten, and then third-team All-American at Michigan. And then she was asked to play on the basketball team at U of M. And then she had a tryout with the United States Olympic volleyball team. And so she's probably, her picture was holding 2 volleyballs on the volleyball building at U of M.
I feel like she's in.
She was in last year, yeah. She was in. But I just going back to, it's like, some of the people, all of a sudden you go, wow.
Yeah, that's
that
crazy.
what they do is amazing.
Yeah.
So you guys really do your due diligence then in vetting.
Well, and we have a guy named Ron Pesch, who is the MHSAA historian. And Ron has a memory like an elephant when it comes to anybody that was involved in Muskegon area sports and their teams. And he is someone you can vet. And when he looks back, he could tell you all about the way that you played because he was there. He was he goes to all the state championship things. He's always at the basketball. Every one of those, he's there. But when I look at those 2 teams that you played on, and I remember watching you play in those games, it was just, wow, the stories there were incredible.
No email needed. Let's get it done.
So
Well played.
we have like Michigan Prepper was asking about if you served on the Hall of Fame board with Jack Van Skelven, the late Jack Van Skelven.
I did. Jack was a wonderful, wonderful man, just a soft-spoken man. And, unfortunately, we've had a number of our past board members have passed on. And what we're trying to do, and no offense to, because Jack was elderly, and we had some folks, when Gene was in his late 70s, we're trying to get some youth on and we're happy to have Scott serve on.
Wait a minute, you said youth.
Yeah, and just think about that.
It's a relative term.
Let's say this. Let's say we're trying to get people that are less than
It is
60.
a relative term. Yeah.
There we go. Like
I can still hang for a little bit yet.
Middle age is 60. So we got some old codgers.
60 is the new 50, or does it kind of go the other way?
Something like that. But those there were some really good. When I look back at the board, I've been fortunate to be on it since I go back to 2002 on that board now, and so we've got a great group of people.
I wish we could get into the rec ball stories that you were talking about with Brent Rath late last week, because there's some legendary stories. He played some rec ball. It's a high-level rec ball, right?
I did. And you know something? I can still take the ball out of bounds as good as any high school player.
But I heard there's some legendary games, even up in the White Lake area here. There were some really good players that came up and played here. You probably played against some of them, I'm sure, Cody, didn't you?
I don't know if it was around then when it was Whitehall, right? You played in some when we had it North Muskegon, but yeah.
Yeah. I was maybe away in college or something along those lines.
Well, Dan, like somebody had mentioned up there, Dan Davis and Kent Wiersma, they were all on the same team. Robert Randall and the Muskegon Heights had a great team.
Yeah.
Muskegon had a great team with, Peanut Butter Brown, who was a star at Grand Valley, played with some of the guys from the Heights. We had our own real strong team. We were always in the final, usually the championship game.
So any closing thoughts, parting shots, anything like that from you guys, from anybody?
I just appreciate the conversation, Dan. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah, it's good to see you.
Good stuff.
Yep, go Rockets.
Yeah.
Go Rockets.
All right, before we sign off, let's thank our sponsors one more time. Grieve Law, Big Stone Therapies, Green Ridge Realty with Chris Dykman and Sarah Reel, North Grove Brewers, Foundation Systems of Michigan with John Botten, Coldwell Banker with the aforementioned Dave Dusenberry, who's in our comments. Thanks, Dave. Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. And then our title sponsors, Van Dyke Mortgage Lakeshore and Durgan Insurance Group. That'll do it for episode 9 of season 3 of the CatchMark Sports Podcast. Thanks again for joining us today. Dan. It was a great conversation.
Glad to be here with you guys.
See you all next Monday. Have